You think that your environment is big, but it's really keeping you small. And I was being kept small because I was just in this little world that I thought that was big. But honestly, it was just me being really kept away from reality, And so when life came to me, I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't know the answers. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know nothing, So yeah, how can we better prepare a generation for real life, hard knock life? Not say, hey, yeah, God's gonna save you and you're gonna make it to heaven. No, hard knock life. Hi everyone, welcome back to Breaking the Silence. I am so happy to welcome you back here on this platform. If you are new here, I want to give you an extra hug. Welcome to the family. Welcome to this safe space that we are creating here on YouTube, on Spotify, on Instagram, everywhere. Like, we're just trying to spread the word that we are breaking the silence and we want to normalize breaking taboos. And this is, I believe, our 4th episode. And I'm just so grateful for everyone who has been tuning in. And so today I just want to continue to talk about my breaking the silence moments in my life that are very crucial, very different seasons that I've been through that have shaped me into this breaking the silence woman that I've become. And I'm a believer. I am a believer that this movement is something that is, really inspired by God. And He's giving me the strength and the courage to do this, because this is not something that it's easy to come up here and, talk about, these topics that have been taboo in my life, that have brought me so much shame and embarrassment. And right now, I'm sharing all of this with so much freedom and so much confirmation. And also, I would like to say, with a lot of confidence, that my generation needs this platform. I believe in it. I believe in the responses I've been receiving. I believe that there's so many more queens out there that have a story. And not only do you have a story, you also have a voice. Every story and every voice matters. And some of us are going to have platforms, and yes, we're going to inspire so many others by living out this call of breaking the silence. But some of us, it's just going to be in our family. We're going to have conversations. We're going to bring our families together behind closed doors. Nobody's going to ever going to know about it. But it doesn't even matter on what scale you're going to break the silence, as long as you do it, as long as you allow God to set you free from these bondages and these people-made rules and people or society-made, restrictions that have been put upon us. I believe that those need to be taken away. They need to be ripped off, and we need to clothe ourselves in the freedom that Christ wants to give us by really stepping into this newness that I have experienced. And so I am just blown away, and I'm so excited about what's going on so far when it comes to breaking the silence. And so let's dive into it. I think the last time I have spoken to you, I told you about the day that I got married. And I want to go back to that moment again with you, because I was thinking about how I felt during that season. And I want to talk a little bit about the things that I would tell my younger self. What would I tell Queen 10 years ago? Like what you know what I'm saying? Like my little queen. What would I have told her, or even thinking about how she felt? I think I have to realize that I really felt unprepared. The day that I got married, I felt unprepared. I remember I had debts when I got married. I didn't really know the depth and the weight of marriage the way that I know it now. And I also would like to tell my younger queen that she doesn't know nothing. I really want to mention that because I get a lot of these questions of younger people, and I don't want to say I'm old, but I know that when you are around your 20-year-old, you really think that you know a lot. I remember thinking I know so much, and at one hand, in one hand, you know a lot because sometimes you see other people's lives. Sometimes you're more mature than your age. I remember I was more mature than my age. I was 20, but sometimes I felt like I had a little bit more experience when it comes to certain things, so I knew more. I kind of had some wisdom for my age. So sometimes you get a little bit delusional. And I remember being a little bit delusional, thinking I knew everything, thinking I had things figured out because I was very good at observing people. And I remember being able to read the room when I came in, and, but those things really do not make you someone that knows it all, And when you are 20 years old, you are most likely not really in tune with who you really are. You are becoming, I believe they say a bunch of 26, or 30 years old, that's when you really become the person. That's when you really know yourself. But around your 20, you don't really do a lot of self-evaluations and really, digging deep into what you like or, who you are and where you come from. So I really thought that I knew it all. And I remember feeling unprepared once I really started to discover what marriage really is. I also felt unprepared because, like, who really prepares you for marriage? I remember I didn't really have a lot of marriage counseling, and honestly, even those counseling sessions, I can't remember really taking them that serious. Maybe we didn't have a lot of them. I think that's what it was because I got married fast. I just mentioned also I got some debts. It was kind of a lot. I was a big spender. I also had this debt that I got because I got in the hospital after I moved to America, and I didn't have no insurance. I remember that was a big debt. I remember going to school and I didn't really finish that year because I wasn't really motivated. That created a debt. And next to that, I also just like to shop, and I wasn't really taught how to deal with my finances at home. And honestly, I also was trying to really, give myself to the ministry and give there and invest there into my disciples and everything. So I didn't really have a good view on how to deal with finances. Something that I would love to encourage us as members of the body of Christ to really, create some help. I don't know if there's people watching that are like, very good at finances and stuff like that. But I think that our generation, we need to learn how to go about with money. And I felt unexperienced. And one of the topics that I also want to mention is that I also grew up in a purity culture. And if you are not familiar with the purity culture, it's a beautiful intention to teach young women to save themselves from marriage, something that the Bible teaches us, to save your bodies. And, because the Bible describes having a sexual relationship with somebody that's not your spouse, that is the most one of the most dangerous sins, because it's like within the body. And because of that, I made a vow when I was 16 years old to save myself for marriage, and I've kept that promise. I remember on my marriage, the day I got married, I didn't really know what to do because the purity culture it teaches you to abstain from a sexual relation before marriage, but it doesn't really prepare you on what to do once you do get married. So the purity culture also encourages you to maybe it was my own opinion, but I remember taking so much pride in my virginity as something that I want to mention, that there's a difference between virginity and purity, and the Bible talks more about purity than virginity. And sometimes you can be spiritually prideful, and I took so much pride that not one guy has touched me, and all these things. But the Bible really talks about purity, and purity is something that comes from within the heart, and that's what the Bible describes, to stay pure, because there's a lot of people that could be virgins but they're still impure, so I was one of those girls that took so much pride in her virginity and in her purity that when I got married, I remember I had a bad start, because I remember feeling like I was cheating on Jesus. I remember I felt like I was cheating on Jesus with my husband, but I didn't know how to function within this area. And I don't know if you're watching this and you have some experiences with this purity culture. I would like to hear from you. Maybe you're married right now. I would love to hear your feedback on how you have experienced this part of your life. I also know that there's a lot of criticism online on purity culture, and like I've mentioned before, that's not the intention of it. And I know that there's been a lot of criticism online on the purity culture, and honestly, I am a firm believer that this culture has been established to help Christian women to save themselves from marriage. That's the intention of it. That's the heart behind it. But I also know that a challenge is to balance it out. That's the challenge, how to balance this out, and how to eventually prepare women for marriage, and how to empower women within the church to embrace their sexuality eventually in marriage. Like I mentioned before, I'm mentioning all this stuff because I want to challenge us, the body of Christ, to grow up and to do better and to grow and to learn from our past. I have a sister now that's 20. So yeah, what are the things that I would talk to her about? How do you get somebody ready for that? When is the right time to talk about all these different topics that are so necessary in the development of an individual? Those are the different questions that I ask myself, that, like I mentioned before, I do not have all the answers on. And that's why I'm raising this conversation because I want to break the taboo. That's why we're here. We were here to break taboo. I want to learn from all these phases of my life. I've been tempted to just leave it all behind in the past and not deal with it no more. I've been tempted to do that. I think that's the most easiest thing to do, to just move on, forget it and just move on. But it has been my greatest privilege, to be used by God for this era, to just learn to reflect and learn to reflect on these matters and to say, no, I think that we could use a challenge as the body of Christ to reconsider these systems that we have put in place, these systems that are, like I said, created to influence young women. But I also believe that just like it was created to influence young women, it also sometimes keeps you away from the reality of things. And that's where I found myself when I was 22 years old. I was a very delusional little girl that had no idea on how life was gonna get. I always had favor with people. So I thought that this was, that's a part of my life. I'm always gonna have favor, and favor is gonna follow me all the days of my life, and I'm gonna have this good life and everything's gonna be well. Well, that was not the case, because I was just living in a facade. facade. And also something that's very important to talk about is the fact that as Christians sometimes we are so separated from the world that we become isolated people, that we don't have a clue about what's going on in the world. I had no idea what was going on in the world. I was literally, I don't know, man. I have no words to describe it. But in that moment of my life, it was normal. I didn't know it until now. But in that moment of my life, I was not woke. And I think that that's something that is so crucial, that yes, we are not from this world, but we also shouldn't be living in this facade, because sometimes you think that your environment is big, but it's really keeping you small. And I was being kept small because I was just in this little world that I thought that was big. But honestly, it was just me being really kept away from reality, And so when life came to me, I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't know the answers. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know nothing, So yeah, how can we better prepare a generation for real life, hard knock life? Not to say, hey, yeah, God's gonna save you and you're gonna make it to heaven. No, hard knock life, real life. How do we get our generation ready? How do we get this generation ready? I want to hear from you in the comments. I really want to raise this conversation, man, because I think that I can learn from you. I can learn from so many of you. I think I'm not the only one who has these questions. I just realized that I was behind on a lot of different things. And I thought that I was just being separated, consecrated. But life came and I was unprepared for real hard knock life. And that's why I'm mentioning all these different stages. And I would like to tell little Queen, that she doesn't know nothing, that she should really take the time to get to know yourself before you get with somebody else. And of course, you're always developing, you're always changing, you're always transforming. But take the good time. If you haven't spent time really with yourself, then you're not ready to be in a relationship with nobody. If you are not able to connect with yourself, then yeah, you're not ready for a relationship. You shouldn't be thinking about a relationship at that age. You should be really getting to know yourself, getting to know God, getting to know your word, getting to know, you're learning how to set boundaries. If you don't know how to set boundaries, you shouldn't get in a relationship. If you don't know how to have boundaries in your finances, you shouldn't get, all those little things made me realize that I wasn't really even ready for marriage. I could sit here and say, oh yeah, it was all my ex-husband. And yes, a big part of my suffering, came in that marriage because of decisions that he had to make. But when I think about it, I shouldn't even had to get married at such a young age. And I know there's a lot of people watching probably that are young and are married, and God bless you. If you have done the good work, the inner work, and you've been dating for a long time and you've really taken the time to connect with one another, and yes, of course, that's the exception. But I'm talking about rushing into marriage without really taking the time to really work on what's going on the inside, and also healing your trauma and making sure that you're marrying for the right intentions. Because I think that I also was running away from reality because I believed in this fairy tale that God was gonna, use me because I was so special. But this episode is really to make you think, so I pray that I made you think when you were listening through all these different topics that I mentioned, and that you start this conversation with me. So leave something in the comments, something that's relatable, maybe something that you would tell your younger self. What is something that you would tell your younger self if you would have a chance to, give her a warning on life? What would you tell her? These are the things that I would tell her. I would tell her to work on herself. I would tell her to work on those depths. I would tell her to get more in tune with her own, self. And I would tell her that she did not know it all, that she had a lot to learn, and that she should have trust her intuition, something that she couldn't do because she was so not in tune with herself. So that's why I would encourage her to get in tune with herself, get to know herself, get to know what she likes, get to know her types, date multiple people, not just stay connected to one person. These are the things I would tell my younger self. There's a lot of more things that I would tell Queen, but these are one of the most important things based on the last episodes. I would share all of this with her. And so I want to hear from you. Like I said, I want to thank you for watching, and next week we'll be back with Breaking the Silence, and I will continue on my story. I'm breaking my silence little by little, and I thank you so much for your support, your encouragement, but also for your dedication in building this platform, building this community where it's all about safety, where it's all about being vulnerable, and where there is no room for shame, and where there's no room for taboo. We're Breaking the Silence, and I'll see you back next week.